What's up everybody? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am Justin Colby, and on this video, we're gonna pause, take a sip of coffee. We're gonna be talking the ultimate real estate crash that's about to happen. Or is it? Stay tuned. What is up everybody? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am Justin Colby, and on this video, we're gonna be talking about the inevitable real estate market crash. It's happened several times before in our country's history. I'll talk briefly about that and show you some statistics, but ultimately, we're in an ultimate high in real estate in terms of prices, and we should all protect ourselves. And so what I'm gonna go through is how you can be protecting yourself and take advantage of the ultimate real estate crash that is inevitable to happen. Now, when I say crash, let me define this for you guys, but before I define it, make sure you're liking this video and subscribing to my channel. Everyone loves people that likes, and make sure you're engaging. Comment on this bad boy, turn on the notification bell, and share this with someone you think could use it. Now, when I say crash in this next crash, what I'm also saying is I actually don't know if it's gonna crash like the 1929 depression, whether it's gonna crash like the 2008 recession, or if it's gonna crash like the 1980s and 1990s savings and loan crisis. So I'm using the word crash very kind of free flowing. So let's talk about our past, because really the way we can look at what is going to be pending is looking about what happened in our past. In 1929, we had the Great Depression. We obviously know a lot about that, but guess what? The real estate market did ultimately bounce back from the 1929 Great Depression. We also had the 80s and 90s savings and loan crisis when interest rates went bonkers, no one could afford homes. In fact, my personal grandfather, who was developing real estate at the time, actually lost his butt because no one could buy these multi-million-dollar homes that he was building because the interest rates went crazy. I want you to be looking up the Great Depression, the savings and loan crisis. I also want you to do some research on what actually happened in 2008 with the recession, we call it, when basically people were doing adjustable loans and it was just really shady loan work that was being given out. Do your research. And ultimately, the reason why I want you to do your research is because I want you to understand the ultimate vision and what happens within real estate is it appreciates. So a crash only matters if you're looking to sell or need to sell your property. As someone that's actually buying a home right now, real time, as I shoot this video, in the process, set to close in less than 20 days, I actually can tell you it's an arduous process. But I can also tell you I'm not going into this property buying a home if I'm thinking about selling it in the next 3 or 5 years. I'm not doing that. I figure, being that I'm heavily involved in real estate, I won't ever sell this home. It's in a perfect location. And if anyone knows anything about real estate, right, it's the #1 rule. Location, location, location. I'm getting it at a good price, and I'm putting it down 20% on the property. So even if the market crashes and I lose 20%, essentially I've not lost anything at all, and I'm still paying my monthly mortgage, and I'm paying down the principal, and I'm gonna stay in my home. Now, I'm gonna get to how you can kind of protect yourself and what you can do to take advantage of a crash. And again, I'm using the word loosely because it's what all the fear mongers out there are talking about, the crash, the crash, the crash. I'm not a fear monger. I actually believe it's going to correct. We are at all-time highs, but I do believe it'll correct. I'm leaning a little bit closer to 10, at max a 20% correction. But hey, again, who knows what's ultimately gonna happen? Let's talk about why it would happen. So many people are out there talking about this foreclosure tsunami. There's gonna be a ton of foreclosures gonna hit the market. Well, that's likely because of this whole mortgage forbearance that's been going on. Now, these numbers seem to be changing almost monthly at this time, but there are reports of over 2 million people in mortgage forbearance during this COVID situation. Now, it seems as if people are catching up on their mortgages and making it right and actually paying their mortgage. And it seems like that number continues to get lower and smaller month over month, which is great. But the reality is there are gonna be a decent amount of people that took advantage of the government's free money, did not get employed when they may have lost their job and did not get another job, and might actually have to be foreclosed on. Now, what does that mean for the crash? Well, that means the banks aren't in the business of real estate. What they're gonna do is they're gonna take it over as foreclosure, put it back on the market, which will start to flood the market with inventory. And when that happens, it's a simple supply and demand. And now we have to deal with, there's too much supply, too little demand, prices are gonna reduce. Now, that's natural, that happens. And quite frankly, if you do any research on the real estate market, that's happened a ton over the years. So we want to keep an eye on what's going on with this mortgage forbearance, what the government is going to do when they release it, how that's going to affect the banks. The number two thing that we need to be looking at is the tenant moratorium, the eviction moratorium on tenants. That obviously hurts because there are millions of people who have not been paying their rent. And there's a lot of polls out there and a lot of research about exactly what this is gonna mean and how many people are still not paying and how many people can start paying again when the moratorium ends. There's a ton of research out there for you to go look at, but it will affect the scenario. Meaning, if the tenants aren't paying, that means the homeowner's not paying, which ultimately means we go right back to this foreclosure situation. So what's gonna happen with the people that aren't able to pay their rent? Well, if they can't pay the rent, they're likely not gonna go get a home, right? If they're done paying the rent, they do get evicted. Most landlords are gonna say, I'm tired of this nonsense, and probably list their property again on the MLS. Back to the supply and demand. Now it's gonna push more supply, less demand. It's gonna reduce the prices of the properties. And lastly, the interest rates continue to go up. As a matter of fact, I am buying my home right now, as I just mentioned, and I actually luckily locked my interest rate early last week. And since early last week, the interest rates have gone up 0.5 point. That's a pretty big amount when you're looking at buying a $1 million plus property. You're looking at a decent more every single month. So for me, I actually lucked out. But the interest rates are still ultimately low. Even if you get an interest rate above a 3, let's say, even though I was approved for a 2.99, even if you got something above a 3, you're still at an all-time low if you look at the history of interest rates, right? And so what can happen is the government could stop buying bonds, and ultimately the bonds are connected directly with the interest rates that are given out. And that could start creeping into the 4s, 5s, and 6s like they did in the early 2000s. Now, there's a big difference than the early 2000s because, like I was telling you, with the mortgage-backed securities and all the fraud that was done with that back in the early 2000s, that's what created the big recession. Nowadays, hopefully, the banks are being a little bit smarter, but it doesn't mean that interest rates won't go up a little bit. So we need to watch that, because if the interest rates go up, that means many people who are buying homes that they can't afford, big tip here, that they can't afford, they're actually taking advantage of the low interest rates. Even though they technically can just afford the mortgage, they don't actually have the ability to afford the actual home, but they're doing it anyways because mom and dad have encouraged them. Go get it, kids. Go own a home. It's the American dream or whatever. But they're buying the home and they actually can't afford it. And it's gonna stop those individuals buying homes. Again, when people aren't buying homes irrationally, which is someone that is actually buying a home right now, I can tell you, I got beat out by a lot of people buying homes irrationally. When people stop being irrational, that means there's not gonna be as many people buying. Again, more homes on the market. Again, supply and demand. So in my opinion, 10 to 20% rollback in prices, I think that is roughly where we are gonna land. I can't tell you for certain, but that's my own gut opinion. Now, how do you protect yourself? First of all, if you are buying a home right now, great, take advantage of the good interest rates. I am personally doing the same. However, I can afford my monthly mortgage. I also can afford 3 to 6 months of paying that mortgage with no income. I also can afford the insurance and the taxes that go along with the property. I also can afford roughly 1 to 3% of maintenance throughout the year on my property. I looked at my numbers, I did the math, and I can afford the home. Most people are buying properties that they simply can't afford. They're trying to take advantage of, FHA and VA loans, 3% down, 5% down, and they can afford the mortgage payment monthly, but that's really it. They're living paycheck to paycheck. So don't do that. That will help you if the property prices roll back. The second thing is, if you are gonna buy a home, put a decent amount of money down. That will lower your monthly interest payment, or your monthly payment, I should say, and will help protect you if the market rolls backwards. Listen, the only time a bank is gonna call a loan due is if you are fully underwater, right? Back into a pre-foreclosure, foreclosure scenario. Well, if you're putting down 20% like I am, then you're likely not gonna have that issue. The banks aren't gonna be worried about whether I'm gonna be being able to afford my home. Another great thing that you can do is hit the like button. YouTube loves when I hit the like button. That can also help you, not really, but I'd love it if you'd hit the like button. You wanna make sure you have some reserves in your bank. You wanna make sure you have 3 to 6 months that you can live off if you don't make another dollar. A lot of people buying homes right now and a lot of people that are scared of this crash don't have that. I'd encourage you, that's massively important when buying a home. And lastly, just some basic simple math of whether you should be buying a home or not is if your monthly payment is more than, call it 30% of your income, I would advise not to necessarily buy that home. You are really gonna be stretching yourself thin with your money. Now you can't do dinners with your wife or husband, taking your family on vacation. You need to use everything for your mortgage. So for me, I personally am not willing to go that route. I don't want to live paycheck to paycheck. So for me, if a mortgage payment or my monthly payment with taxes, insurance, principal, all are above 30%, I don't want to buy that home. That's my own take on this. Ultimately, guys, I'm not exactly sure what the crash will be, when it will be, but I will tell you, and I love doing the Gary V ears, by the way. Big tip there. What I will tell you is it's inevitable. It will happen. It's happened over history. Do your research. Just protect yourself. Be smart. It's coming. Just do the right thing and make smart moves, because if you do, you'll be insulated and protected from it. Hopefully you find this well. Hopefully you smash the like button. Make sure you subscribe, and I will see you on the next YouTube video. Peace.